what you're gonna do.
You can't fight the future.
Wrestling God.
ProWrestlingRadio.com presents.
Are you talking to me?
Pro Wrestling Radio live online.
You think The Rock actually cares?
What is he doing here?
Oh, it's true.
I'm bringing everybody with me.
That's hard time.
Call in with a question or comment.
6, 1. Can you feel it?
I hate your ever. Hold the damn phone.
Toll free at 1-877-800-8834.
That's how I roll.
You sick son of a bitch. Come get some.
Because I've done all of that.
And now your host of the show,
The king is back on his throne.
Eric Gargiulo.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said
Get
so.
started. Eric Gargiulo with Bret Hart for Pro Wrestling Weekly. Bret, you've just put out a book, and what I want to know is what inspired you to write that book?
I just wanted to capture some of the sort of my great accomplishments that I've made in wrestling and put them all, put it back out there in the light again, shed some light on different opponents from Steve Austin to Goldberg to you name it.
Right. What was it like growing up in a wrestling family?
Oh, it was interesting.
I bet.
At the least, I was around a lot of interesting characters. I really have a very interesting perspective, I think, of the entire business, and a really long one. It's funny because my dad has such an interesting perspective on the business. He's 85,
right,
and he's been in it so long. But when I think about it, I've been involved in wrestling since I was about 4 years old.
Wow!
And every Friday, I was either working in some capacity in wrestling, from selling programs to refereeing to eventually wrestling and doing it forever. It seems
right.
But it was interesting. We all had a passion for it. I think the whole family was, thrived on the weekly wrestling show.
Huh. Interesting. Now, as I'm sure most of the wrestling public know, you're currently out with a concussion. What is the status right now of your injury, and are there still any contemplations of retirement for you?
Well, it's certainly a possibility.
Okay.
I'm reasonably optimistic that at this point, I'm really in the middle. It's something that's still lagging in me. It's affected my speech and my. There's a lot of complications that come from concussions that might not seem apparent to people on the outside. I've had a headache for 4.5 months.
Wow.
That still doesn't go away. It gets smaller, and sometimes it's like you can live with it.
Yeah.
But it's just the thought right now of me sort of being body slammed or taking any kind of even a remotely light fall in a wrestling match is difficult for me to imagine right now. So it is a question whether or not I can come back. I have a lot of similarities, I think, with my concussion as Eric Lindros.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're doing the show in Philly here, everybody's very familiar with that.
Yeah, it's like Eric Lindros. I know he kind of got chastised for, say, making comments about the medical team or something like that.
Yeah, he did.
And the truth is when I'm going through the similar thing, like sometimes you can't necessarily make the point that you're trying to make.
Right.
And I'm not defending him more, because I don't know what he said, and maybe he clearly meant it. But you have an inability to be able to focus on your. Really, sometimes your brain is just so messed up that you can't. I found myself saying things that I didn't quite come out the way I wanted them to.
Right.
And I had good intentions behind the comment kind of thing, but
yeah.
It's really hard. It's a really bad injury, and it really is. It's been the scariest injury I've ever gone through, and I really certainly relate to Eric Lindros, and I hope that, like myself, I hope that we both play again.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you well there. You do a weekly column up there in Calgary, and you had mentioned before you had made your Nitro appearance that you were surprised, it seemed in your column that you were surprised that they had asked you back. Why were you so surprised?
Well, just, I never see myself being able to fit in. You mean you're talking about the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to imagine fitting in with being limited to what I'm able to do. I still can't lift weights. I still can't do anything too intense.
Right.
I know I swung a chair on Monday night.
Right.
That's about all I can do. I can't do much. I'm really in a bad position that way. I want to do more.
Right.
But anything you do, really just, especially the more physical you want to try to be. Like, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
If my phone rings, I got to sort of walk over and get the phone. If I race up the stairs and spin around the corner and grab the phone, I can do all that.
Right.
It's not like my brain doesn't work or anything. It's just that if you start to really do intense things, by the end of the day, you start to get a really bad headache. Everything sort of goes backwards. You take a few steps back.
Right.
So you have to keep being very calm all the time and not doing anything to stress yourself out. It's really tough. I've become a vegetable almost. It's hard for me to be able to do that.
I can understand where you're coming from, and again, not to harp on the Eric Lindros situation, but to give you a little insight on it, his whole defense here was he kind of tiptoed around the issue without coming out and saying he had a concussion because he didn't want to be labeled a baby, more or less, and he felt pressured not to admit that he had a concussion. And let me ask you, did you feel pressured to come back? Was this a decision that you made 100%, or how did that even come about?
What I've done has been safe enough. Like, I wouldn't do anything that would complicate my concussion. But I will say that I had a concussion I got it around the December 20th pay-per-view in Starrcade with Goldberg.
Right.
I wrestled for 3 more weeks after that. And I agree with Eric Lindros that maybe they were negligent. And like, they're the ones that, when you have a concussion, and I think they were well aware that he had a concussion, or it was a concern of everybody's.
Right.
I can't do the thinking. It's like my brain was messed up. I found myself doing stunts. I found myself being chokeslammed and powerbombed night after night for almost 3 weeks.
Right.
And telling everyone every night, I think I have a concussion. Nobody takes that into account, and I bet it wasn't very far off from Eric Lindros. They want him to play. They want him to do stuff.
Yeah.
And you want to be there for the team. But you lose the ability to diagnose yourself.
Yeah.
And I've been told that right from the start. I couldn't believe I was as hurt as badly as I was, and I was actually somewhat skeptical. But I realized over a few weeks that I was forgetting everything. I would, all of a sudden it just dawns on you how really messed up you really are.
Yeah.
And then the fear sets in that it's never going to go away. And I relate a lot to Eric Lindros, and I have a lot of sympathy for him. And I think that the Philadelphia fans, and maybe I think the fans do, but I think the management should reconsider their position. I think to be hard on him for he must be going through a really difficult time because your brain is just so out of whack,
right?
And it's hard to be held accountable for what you say and for what you think.
Yeah,
but it's not far off from the truth what Eric Lindros thinks anyway.
Yeah, and again, not to beat a dead horse, the fans seem to be more sympathetic and understanding than the management does. And I guess being in wrestling for so long, you can relate with all the shady promoters that I'm sure you've worked with throughout the years.
Yeah, well, I just think concussions are really, I got this from my doctor, who's the head of the NHL Players Association.
Okay.
Concussions, and, in the old days, they just pat you on the back and push you back out for another shift kind of thing. And, maybe Bobby Clark, that's how he did it, but concussion is, been fearful of is losing my memories and some of my most cherished memories.
Right.
To lose a couple extra matches and just isn't important. And it really is easy to rock your brain. I rocked my brain so bad that I forgot home phone numbers of people that I've called every day for years.
Wow, it's
just really bad.
That's wild. I got to ask you, again, with the concussion recently, I'm sure you're aware of it, because if I'm aware of it, you have to be aware of it, that Hulk Hogan recently did an interview where it didn't seem like it was any kind of an angle where he sort of made fun of your concussion, saying something that you couldn't even remember the letters, WCW. Are you aware of that, and what are your feelings on something like that?
Well, he's probably, if he said it, I only knowing Hulk the way I do, that it was meant to, because it's true.
Yeah.
I had trouble remembering when they first diagnosed me with a concussion. They gave me 5 random words to remember. They were going to ask me in 5 minutes. You know, they clearly said, we're going to ask you these 5 words in 5 minutes.
Right.
I couldn't remember any of the words 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, like, okay, I have a really bad concussion.
Right.
I thought when they told me that it would be anywhere from 2 weeks to 9 months, that it would probably be closer to 2 weeks or maybe or less.
Right.
2.5 months later, I realized that I was really still messed up, and I've learned to really appreciate every single thing that the doctors tell me. I'm like totally whatever they want. I will not go in the ring and jeopardize my health anymore because I've lost like my doctor told me, I've lost the ability to diagnose myself. It's like taping up your knee or your ankle or you got a sore shoulder and you sort of know what you're limited from a pain threshold. You know what you're capable of doing.
Right.
But with your brain and your concussion, it's a whole different thing. You can't even. I was capable of walking across 8 lanes of traffic. You could have pointed me in a direction, had me do just about anything.
Yeah.
And I thought I had control of what I was doing, but I was totally out of whack. And I'm glad that I've taken myself out of that, and I'm just going to let my doctors decide what I do.
Yeah. Let me ask you, everybody's very well aware of the new regime back in WCW, Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. I had Terry Taylor on the program a couple weeks ago, and we talked about them coexisting and their different personalities. As somebody yourself that has worked for both and extensively, do you think they can coexist, and do you think they can make a serious run at Vince and WWF?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that they both have very good creative minds, and I think Eric was always really creative, but he just got burned out, and then he came back, and he seems almost like a revamped, reborn kind of guy. He got a whole, new lease on life kind of thing.
Right.
And I think Vince Russo has a lot of imagination and a lot of great ideas and stuff. And I think the two of them, I never thought that Vince Russo had as good a chance, like a clear opportunity to sort of prove himself, and which I expressed to him just 2 weeks ago when I saw him for the first time.
Right.
That a lot of guys, I think, were really happy with the job he was doing. There was some question about some of the content, but I mean, for me in particular, I was happy with what they were doing with me. For the first time in the WCW, I was very positive.
Yeah.
Didn't make a point of expressing that, and I wished, and I think a lot of us, like Benoit and certain guys, were very, pro Vince, and on account of not making that clear, Vince Russo got sacked earlier than a lot of us would have wanted. And so I'm glad that he's back. I think Bischoff and Russo will work really well together, and that, if anything, that'll lessen the load and the burden of one person having to put together so much thought into 2 or 3 different wrestling shows.
Right. I do have a question I have to ask. I don't want to beat a dead horse with it, but it's very rare that I have you here, and probably will be, again. Beyond the Mat just came out, and Terry Funk sat down, and they talked about his relationship with Mick Foley, and he had made a comment that the people that you draw the most money with, you become closest to. And going back through the years, it seemed that in the WWF, with you and Shawn Michaels, you guys came up together in the aspect that you had the feud with the Rockers, which really tore up the house shows back in the day, and then you became world champion and were defending against the up-and-coming Shawn Michaels and so on and so forth. Where, during that feud and that relationship, did you see things go wrong?
Well, I think Shawn started to change just before he got the title.
Right.
But I don't have any bad feelings for Shawn. If anything, I feel bad that he got hurt last year or 2 years ago, or whatever, and that he's not wrestling anymore. To me, he was one of the greatest wrestlers I ever worked with, and one of the greatest wrestlers I ever watched. I feel bad that there became a rift between us, but I've learned now, after sort of looking back on it, maybe I'm wrong, but I think Vince McMahon had a lot to do with the animosities between him and me, and I expressed that to him the day in Montreal at the Survivor Series. I know he was involved in every single aspect of what happened to me in the Survivor Series.
Sure.
I just know how Vince works now, or at least I think I do, and I think he works best for Vince McMahon to really pit his talent against each other all the time and build a lot of tension and heat between them over a lot of things. Like, I said this about so-and-so, or did you hear what Sean said? He told me a lot of things that Hulk Hogan said about me that I found really offensive.
Right.
Until I found where I met Hulk years later and we talked about it.
Right.
So it works best for Vince to have a lot of tension between his top guys, because then they have harder matches and there's a little aggression in every move that they do because they don't like each other. And so I don't have any bad feelings towards Sean. If anything, I miss the relationship that I had with him.
Yeah. Another guy that you've seen that you've repaired your relationship with over the years has been Ric Flair. And you were very vocal back in the day when he had left at how disappointed you were in the matches you had with him. But then when you came into WCW, you guys had a hell of a match at that pay-per-view, which the two of you had headlined, and drew a hell of a buy rate back in that time without the Hulk Hogan's or anybody else on the pay-per-view. What changed your opinion of Ric Flair over the years?
This is just a whole new respect for him. I think I spoke out of school kind of thing. As I got older, I started to really appreciate just how great Ric Flair was. I think he's, like, even now, he still works harder than most of these guys in the ring today. And
right.
I can't believe how he takes that big deal off the top and stuff. Yeah. I'm in awe of that, and I'm in awe of Terry Funk even to it, for the level of commitment and punishment that they sort of still exact on their bodies and all that. But I can say one thing about Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, who I prior to joining the WCW, and then when I finally did see them, they were very gracious, and they accepted. Like we really talked about what I said and why I said it.
Yeah.
And they were very, very good to me, and they've been really good to me since I've been in the WCW, both of them.
Okay.
And I consider them very good friends of mine now.
Excellent. Well, I have two more questions for you, and I know you have to get going. Going back through the years, it's really nice, the things that you said about Sean, that you've gotten past that. Now, as everybody knows, Hunter, Triple H over there, has really taken off. Are you surprised at how much he's taken off over there, or did you see it in him?
No, I think I saw it in him. I always thought certain things about his style were very good.
Yeah.
I think, Hunter, I don't know. He's a very plastic kind of guy. I don't know if he's a decent wrestler.
Right.
I certainly don't consider him like incredible or anything. I don't think he does anything really super. I guess what Hunter's probably best at is that he does a lot. He does a lot of things nice in there. He does well with what he works with. He doesn't do anything really fancy or too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He's a guy that, from a dressing room standpoint, though, that I don't think, unless he's changed a lot, I think he's a fishy guy to do business with.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm not in the dressing room where he's a guy that will stab and slash his way to the top, and there's guys like that all over the wrestling business, and he's one that stands out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a lot of regard for him.
Yeah, such has been said about him by others. And the final question I want to ask you for is, hypothetically speaking, if you could take 3 matches out of your career to put on a videotape as your legacy to give to your children and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, off the top of your head, could you name 3 matches for me?
Yeah, I would probably have to say the hour match with Shawn Michaels in Anaheim.
Excellent.
I'd have to say the WrestleMania 13 match with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
And it's really a toss-up. Top of my head, I'd have to say either the Wembley match with the British Bulldog, or I would have to say the Wembley match with the British Bulldog.
Wembley match with the British Bulldog. Well, listen, Bret, I want to thank you very much for your time, and I wish you the best of luck, and I really hope you get better. And I know, speaking for all the fans listening out there and reading about you, we want to see you get back in the ring, but see you back in the ring healthy and not too soon. So we wish you the best.
Okay.